Welcome back. So I'm going to continue from pretty much exactly where I stopped 90 minutes ago. I'm going to dive in and add some variables for the -w feature in the curl command line tool. And yeah, let's just do that. I'm just going to find my editor again, and I'm going to switch to the proper layout here. So the chat is still available around, so that's the text from the previous session I did this morning, and now I'm back again. Well, here you can see a git log. We don't have to. So I decided I need to do this a little bit better, so I will do a function here for what did I call it? This is my branch for this purpose. So I'm going to make a function that should work for all URL parts, basically. So I'm going to just cut everything, do some kind of static int URL part. Haven't really figured it out yet, so just paste the code in there. So we want to have the URL, and we want to know we want the particular ID, right? And that's a write out ID. Variable ID, let's call it vid. We return a string content. Okay, content P, content pointer. So we have the URL. Maybe we can assume that there's a URL. Part. Okay. If there's an error, we return an error code. If it's a success, we return 0. Okay, so we have this one which says exactly which part we want, but it needs to be converted to the curl API part. Called a curly U part. C part. Then we do a switch. We switch on vid. Wait a minute. What kind of parts do we have? These are all the parts. Okay, so this is just going to be a conversion table, pretty much from what did I call it? URL host, like this. So if it's a host, then C part is curl U part host, like this. And path That's the two one we did this morning, so this should be just and if this returns an error, then we just return error immediately. Otherwise, let's move that one as well to in there. So if it works to parse the URL, it will return 0 and it will continue here, and then we will extract the part, and the part is called cpart part. So that's the particular part from the URL that we parsed, and we store the result in the part pointer. We don't use any option here right now, but I think we want to come back to that. But we'll figure that out. We'll add a few test cases then, so we'll see that we get the results that we want. So we'll just make sure that if this returns an error, then something is truly wrong. That's usually an out of memory or something. So it really should have a part here. So if this, I wanted to do like this, so set the return a pointer to like this. And of course, if this happens, it'll return a pointer that is allocated, so that needs to be freed with curl free. And then it'll return 0 because it's a success. Something like that. URL part. Just gonna save that position, because then down here we're going to do then URL part per this URL. Basically also I think I'll just make sure that there is a URL. I'm not exactly sure how it couldn't be, but and then the ID, and then str info, something like that. If not, if that's right, if it's not, if it returns 0, it's success. Then we can set free str to str info, and we do valid is true. I think maybe like this. And we just need to figure out how to get that ID. That's the ID, I believe. Hello. So what is that? URL not oops, it can't be URL. Sometimes I do this URL handle. Let's call it URL handle. Enumeration value var none not handled in switch. Yes. So since those are the only ones we support right now, we can return not implemented. Shouldn't reach that anyway. It should be a const, should it? Okay, so does it work then with the old? Yeah, that's the our test case. Woo! First try makes you suspect you forgot something. No, I think it was a pretty good first try. So this should handle out-of-memory problems there and there and there and there, and it returns a little free. So let me just try my Valgrind as well. And there's not even any leaks. So pretty good. Pretty good start. Okay. So over here we have host and path, and now let's switch over to this is the API header file, and these are all the parts that the API can expose. So I figure we could expose all of them. 4, 6, 8, 11 of them. And some of them are a bit conditional depending on what different things. But I can imagine I think we should just go with all of them. I'll do that to start with and then maybe reconsider. Where are we? URL. Oh. There, URL host, URL path. All right, we don't need the URL one. URL one is already there. That's the full URL. So we need scheme, user, password, blah, blah, all the other ones. So I'll try to do them in the same order. Scheme, user, password. Options is only used for some of the email options, email schemes. Host, path, and there should be a port there as well. Port, path. After path there's a query. After the query there's a fragment, and there's this special zone ID. Scheme, user, password, options, host, port, path, query, fragment, zone ID. Okay, so there's a bunch of them now. Should just verify nothing happened, nothing breaks. And in the tool write out source code, I can then just add more. So I need one case for all of these. Remove host. Oh, oops, wrong key. Remove host, remove path. And then we make a little macro that just does it like this. And then we just repeat the macro a few times. Bam. Then we have a template, and then we could possibly make this into a table later, but I don't right now. User password options. As you can see, I have a key or word completion. I actually have it on a control tab. So when I type like this, I press control tab and it completes the word. Just a convenience thing. So now we have support for 10 different URL parts, and they can all output them. So now we can actually just verify. Let's remove Valgrind again, just like that. And now we have, for example, we can do a URL scheme. Good test there, because I forgot to. I only added it internally. I also need to add the URL host, because I only added the IDs, right? So now I need to add the actual strings for the parsing part. So I need a like this. sorry, messing things up. URL scheme like this, I think. So if I just try that out, we have a scheme working. No, we don't. Because of some reason. Because of this. Scheme. Yeah. All of these ones. So I already did host path scheme. So host path scheme. So another macro. Bam. That's 10 of them. So for every URL component, if there is a URL, we call the URL part function. Seems to build. Try it again. Yes, it says FTP as the URL scheme. Let's try URL user. Because I didn't add all of those yet, right? I just added scheme. So scheme host path. Scheme host port. And before host we have user and password, right? User, password, user, password, and option. Or is it options? Always complicated if it's in plural or not. Okay, so we have 4, 6, 7, so we're missing 3. That's query, fragment, and zone ID. 1, 2, 3. Query doesn't complete very good. Fragment, zone ID. Query, fragment, zone ID. Now then, can we get the user now? So the user is user. It's a bad example. Daniel. Yes, and password secret. Of course with a 3 there. Secret, so we try the URL password secrets. Yep. So seems to work decently. There's this question, of course. What if we do like this? Should we support this? If it's a non-recognized scheme? Food for thought. I mean, the parser can be told to accept unrecognized schemes. But yeah. Oh, and let me try another thing. I figure we should support unrecognized schemes, maybe. I wanted to just see what it does with port, because port number, of course, as you can see, there is no port number in this URL. I, of course, couldn't even do the right syntax. So, and it doesn't output any port number now, but that's we can actually make it support that. because the API has one of these. We use it, we get the port number even if there was no port number. I think we do it like this. So we basically ask curl that if this uses the default port number, give us a default port number. So for FTP, it gets 21. Magic, right? And of course, we could also just add something foo. And try the query. Fragment. Foo. The fun thing with the query part of a URL is of course that curl doesn't really ever use it because it's not sent over the wire. It's just part of the local management of the URL. So that is always cut off before it gets sent over the wire. But that's not important here, right? Because it's a URL that we use to curl, so it can still do this. Okay, this is the initial basic functionality. Pretty decent, I think. It's also very small. No, not diff, stat. 96 insertions. Yeah, so quite a lot of these. That's the tables, that's the conversion table, and that's another table, basically. So lots of adding things in tables. So what do we do then? We add a first simple test case for this because we want to make sure that the basic functionality works, right? Oh, that's the wrong file. I wanted to. So this is the makefile.inc. This lists is an include file for the make and there's a long reason why it's an include file. So let's not go in there. But it lists all the existing test cases, and all test cases are actually named test and the number. So this is all the existing test cases that exist, and you can see quite a lot of them. And the numbers. The number doesn't really stand for anything, it's just a unique ID, so we can pick any one that isn't used. And we have these sort of gaps here to illustrate that there is a gap in the number sequence. So we know for all of these there's a gap, so we can pick like here, test 423, that's the one I want to use. So I add it here in the table, and then I usually do it like this. So I load test 1, and I save it as test 423. So now I have a test 423. It does the wrong thing, but I want it to keywords W or write out maybe. Keywords are just helpful keywords that can help us run a subset of tests at a later time. So this is just a response from an HTTP server. So let's use HTTP then. Yes, like this. And here's just the command line accept curl down. So it'll just do a get to this host IP being where that runs, the port number where the test server runs, and test number is just the current test. That would be 423, right? So, and here it verifies the protocol after it's run. But we will add some fun things, right? We will add basically this that I put here. So for example, if I use that to start with, and I then verify standard out on exit, Okay, I think this will fail because of how the... So let's just make sure that I build the entire test suite with my current source code. Lots of memory leaks to start with. That's well, that's I guess it's good because it shows everything is running. And when it comes to memory leaks, it's easier to run to load the Valgrind output. So it's the URL that is done on 180. In are we not? No, we are not cleaning up the URL handle after we're done. Yes, we are, but apparently not good enough. So, we can obviously not then return for all of these problematic cases because then we skip the cleanup. We need to do the cleanup for every time we did that one, right? So let's do like this. RC So basically set the return code for all the if there's a problem, but if there's a problem we don't do the rest of the stuff. I'll just see if we can. Right, and now it works, but it also works I don't think because we don't verify the output the way we want it to. Right. Because we cannot verify a blank, but we want to verify this. So we want to make sure that, for example, that it outputs the host IP and this is the path. For example, now we should just verify. Now it should fail because the comparison should be wrong. Right, and that's what I was a little bit afraid of. I think we want to do this. So we want to do no output here. Sorry, option no output. No, that's not it. The thing is that the test suite adds a lot of magic options to be able to save the data to do its comparisons. Yeah, option. Yeah, what is that? Thank you. It could have been that. I don't remember exactly which one is which. I'll have to read read my own documentation. Prevent the test script to slap on the output argument. There is also not additive. Right, so it's not that. That's wrong. I don't need that one. I will just check. This is it. The test suite creates this file with a full command line that it actually runs to verify. This is the one I want to remove, I think. I don't want the header, so yes, I want no option, no include. That's the one. Crap. That's better. So then I don't get the HTTP headers included, since it'll verify standard out. So by default, it actually behind the scenes kind of adds that option, but that option then ruins our test case. So we need to fiddle a little bit. So I wanted to do, since it adds the path, it should add the scheme, which is HTTP, right? And there's no user, there's no password. Maybe we should add a user and password, should we? UP, like that. P P P P P P P. And then there's the port number. So and we have these variables that are created then at runtime by the test suite itself. And it outputs query and URL fragments, so I guess that's why it has some extra. Yeah, that's why we have space, query space fragment. So I'm going to add QQQ FFFF, right? So they should then, let's do quotes around it as well. QQQ FFF, so like that. Right, and that, the foo one here, that's the content. I can save that by just, getting rid of the content. So the transfer doesn't actually return any data. Oh, right, yes. But this looks right, because we added a query part to the URL, so it actually needs to do that. And we added name and password, so it actually will send an authorization header to the in the request. So that's fine. We should just verify that there. And we can we switch off the checking of the data, because the way we do this, we don't really have to check that we get the correct data. We have lots of tests for that. So this is more focused on actual testing these options. Yeah, I forgot to bring the coffee. Kind of a rookie mistake, right? Anyway, test 423. Now it runs okay, and it has these variables. Seems to be a decent start, right? Tests data test 423. So that's the. Let's just add blah blah. I'm just committing. Let's clean up the commits before I do anything more with this later. I can just rebase it properly like that. There. I wanted to. What did I want to? So I have a basic test case. The question is, of course, what if. Yeah, I probably need some more test cases. Ooh, what's cool if we do two 2 transfers, right? Because I think it'll output once for every URL. I think that is the point. Correct. And then of course the protocol will be wrong, but maybe we could just skip. We don't have to verify the protocol either. We can remove that. So if we want to, we could do this, I think. Yes. And then that just proves that it works twice, but maybe we should then change some data so that we see that it actually uses the new URL and not the old, not the previous one. So yeah, that works. And what about, I was thinking if we make a URL that clearly is wrong. Well, okay. First things first. I wanted to go to the documentation and the write out option and add something in the docs for these options. The scheme part of the URL that was fetched. Sort of. And then we can repeat that 9 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Scheme user password options URL host. Oops. Port. The host part, the host name part, the host path. Path query query fragment and zone ID, the zone ID part. Okay, that's the documentation. I want to add a new URL. Oh, we can add it afterwards too. One that we know will fail. So pretty much if I do a URL with a space in it, we know that it won't work. And all the fields would be blanks, so we will only have the white spaces, which is a bit unfortunate because white spaces are hard. So maybe we should replace all the spaces with something else. For example, we could use not slashes are not very good either. plus. Just to have something slightly nicer to, and now of course there should be pluses between these ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Yes, because now the last transfer fails, so it will return the error code from the last transfer, so it will return number 3. So maybe if I could make this the second transfer instead, and then we can just switch. Just to make sure that they're all actually blank when it fails, or when it's an illegal URL, pretty much. It can't parse it. And what's curious is, of course, what happens if we, for example, we do exactly this URL, but we make it a non-supported scheme. We invent our own, the H55P, like this. It will not support it because it's bad. So should that work or should it not work? Let me get it in here, and we should just get a feel for it by doing this. We could guess scheme, and we could well, you're welcome. It's a work of joy. So I wanted to do this non-support scheme. Allow a non-supported scheme. So we just add that to the parser options here. And just take a look how that feels, if it works. Yeah, that's the scheme, right? H5PP. So I think it feels right. I mean, to support it. So it has the little downside that the transfer will fail, but the parsing output will be right. So I think it's okay. Hello 2000. So we can, since we know this transfer will fail, it won't use this hostname for anything. So we can actually just replace it in the test case a little bit. Oh, then we could do a test without port number as well, right? So we remove the port number from the hostname. Maybe we could do it without username and password as well, just to do. The question, yes. What's fun is that so there's no port number in the URL here, right? And there's this imaginary scheme. So there's no default port number for this. So the port number will still be blank because we don't know the port number for this, right? Because it doesn't really have a port number. So I don't know. Maybe I should just make a port number. So I removed the username and password and I set a new port number. The name with URL components. This is the name that is, you see this HTTP GET. Now with my updated name, the name is in there. So that it actually explains what is being tested or what is being verified. Yep. So that's a pretty good start, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I added 10. So it's the zone ID and the options that are not here. So options are only for a few URLs, and the zone ID is only there for IPv6 addresses. So I'll leave them for now. I think this is a decent start. Usually when I output stuff and verify them to standard out, they run into problems on Windows because that's always complicated. But if I remember this correctly, I need to do this mode text because of reasons for Windows, so that it knows that it's actually text comparison it needs to do, that the output is text, not binary. I think. Fix up. I'll just rebase everything like this and just squash them together and rephrase it. Add URL component variables. Just figured I would reuse the list of the names to have them in my commit message. But I want to line wrap on 72 columns when I write commit messages. So output specific components from the used URL. The following variables are added for this purpose. Added test 423 to verify. Of course, this returns different return codes for different kind of problems, but nothing ever really cares about them. So possibly I should do something better, but I don't know. I think I could leave it like this for now. I'm a little bit curious what my biggest mistakes were here. So sometimes it is fairly good to kick off this as a early pull request. Where is my browser? Too many browsers going. There is my browser. Pull request. That's the one, right? So yeah. Command line. And feature windows. This is a new feature. We won't merge it until the next feature window opens, which should be on Thursday if things go fine. Boom. So let's see how this runs in the systems. So now, of course, this will take a while. If I did something really bad, it will tell me pretty quickly. It added a tests label, and that's fair, I guess, since I added a test as well. Well, this headset I'm using is just an old Sennheiser. The best thing with this headset is that it's very lightweight, so it's very easy to wear on my head for a long time. And I actually like headsets because of the sound, so that you get a decent sound without it being too close to the keyboard. I have one of these mics here as well that I could use, but the downside with having a more separate mic is possibly that, I mean, the upside is that I don't have to have headphones at all when I don't listen to anyone, but the downside is that it gets closer to the keyboard and the keys. My keyboard is not completely silent, as I guess you can tell when I type. So it's MX Cherry Red, but they're not. I mean, they're not loud, but they're not silent either. So 4 successful. So we have a few builds that they don't run any tests. They just verify the build. So I guess they're very fast. Well, you see a great wallpaper on this in the stream. It's actually not my wallpaper on my desktop. So whatever you see on the stream is my manufactured output. So I've just selected a few windows. I picked I've actually wanted a sort of a calming, naturey thing. Usually, even when I do my release videos, I pick a wood background because I think it's just kind of a relaxing view. On my screens, I can't even see the background, so I have so many windows everywhere. So I have right now 4 browser windows and a bunch of terminals and a bunch of editors. So you see a cleaned up version of what I see. Right, but you need to remember then that one of the browser windows is the chat window here, and one of the browser window is this window I show you. And this is sort of I show this for you because these are 3 tabs I use for the stream, so I don't show you my private tabs or my private browser windows. So I get a lot of extra stuff when I do the streams like this. So yeah, just to not expose my private stuff, but also to make sure that it's pretty clean and neat output for you, so you don't have to see a lot of extra junk that is completely unnecessary. So there a few more builds come through. So we at least know that the build was not broken terribly. But of course, we haven't really run any of the major test cases yet. And things like the torture test, that's a good thing to get that running through this test, and then we'll. Maybe I should just double check the torture test myself. That would be a good idea, right? So usually I run torture tests without Valgrind, because torture tests, as you might know, as you can see, it first verifies that this test case makes 267 function calls to instrumented function calls that we can intercept and inject errors into. And then it'll rerun this test 567 times and make one after the other fail once, and then it verifies that it never leaks any memory. And it never crashes either. So actually it's pretty good. First attempt at a torture test, and it works fine. And I just wanted to show you that the GitHub code scanning tool complained on my code. And if it does that, so the variable C part may not be initialized at this access. And then the part. So let me just double check the code. I'm pretty sure it was fine, but oh, okay, yes, it is, because of course, so if it comes around here, C part is not initialized. It won't be used, but the tool, of course, is a little bit naive. So I'll do two things. First, I will null this pointer, and I could set the C port to something just something, because it doesn't matter. Just initialized, because then at least the tools, the static analyzers, won't warn on it being uninitialized down here. Because it won't be anyway. So but just to help the tools a little bit to not get all stressed up. Please, the code analyzers. So we push an update, and it'll restart everything. Reload. It'll automatically remove these actually after it notices that everything has changed. Yeah, there's always that annoyance with the false positives of the code scanning tools. So like this was obviously false positives, but I sometimes just give in and do it like this to just avoid the false positives as well, just because it's such an annoyance when we get these false positives, and it's not really a high price to do this. So I figure it's worth it. Okay, so there it starts again. I also actually regularly fire up a separate VM and run a coverity, or trigger off a scan by coverity. Coverity being a separate, more of a standalone code analyzer, and they don't like us to run them in the CI, so I do that pretty much on a somewhat weekly basis. Fire up the VM, make a special build from master, and then just push that to the coverity build servers, and then verify that it actually whatever it finds, we fix. Yes, and I think these particular problems are also good to fix because they tend to be a little bit of a error. I mean, the errors sneak in later when you go in there and add or change code, because it might be really obvious now, but once this gets changed and modified over time, it also gets easier that this actually become a real problem. So that's also another reason to fix it now, even though right now it might be a little bit obvious, but over time, later on, it might not be that obvious. So there are good reasons to fix this. I never quite understand. I think this will vanish once the job completes a rerunning in the new. Such a long list, it's also impossible to say where it is. Yeah, that's the code QL job, I think. Oh well, that is that. Not too bad, I think. So now I'm at 1 hour, and I already added 10 new variables for the write out option, added a test case, seems to run through, doesn't leak memory, works with the torture tests. I added it to the documentation. Okay, so I have another thing that I want to do. Let's do that. So I have a book called Everything Curl. There are no pull requests for Everything Curl, but what I wanted to do is Everything Curl is on everythingcurl.dev. So yeah, it might be a little bit tiny, but we can zoom in. So this is the book. So it's pretty big. You can there's a PDF version of it as well. There's no EPUB. Maybe I should do an EPUB. It doesn't matter. But I wanted to go into this. Where is it? Under releases. Yes, this image is now wrong. The other day we modified the release cycle setup in the project, and we've decided to. So this image here on the screen. It shows the previous setup. Basically, well, we have an 8-week release cycle. That's still the same thing, but we have tweaked the periods a little bit. So I will. So now we have a modified one, and I made an image so it looks like this. So this is the new. This is a Google slide with the new. So this is the old one, and this is the new one. I had to make a new image. It was actually pretty difficult to make it. So I wanted to save a new, like this. I wanted to save a new this image, and then make a pull request for the book for this new image. And not only image, because I think this text here is also. No, there's no text. It does look like the Chrome logo. The new one looks a little less like the Chrome logo. But still, yeah. So the new one then being, if you look at the image here, we release stuff on Wednesdays, and then 8 weeks later we release on the next Wednesday, right? So there's, if things go fine, we always release on Wednesdays. Then every 8 weeks, like round and round and round. But so when we release stuff, we now have a 10-day cooldown period before we merge anything, any new features. We can merge bug fixes. But anyway, this is to give some time to possibly do a patch release if there's a severe bug or problem that would need attention under new release or whatever. And we've also decided to slightly lower the bar for doing patch releases, so maybe we will do slightly more patch releases going forward. So if there's any annoying bug that we find after the release within this period, we can do a patch release after the release, maybe 1 week in or something. Anyway, if there's no problems at all, on this Saturday, 10 days after the release, we open the feature window, and then we allow features, changes, whatever to get merged. Of course, that assuming that they're fine and reviewed and the tests are green and everything is fine. So we do that. We have that open for 3 weeks, and then on that Saturday over there, when it's 25 days left, we close the feature window and we only accept bug fixes. That's the feature freeze, the red period. So that's 25 days all until it's released Wednesday again, and then we release, and then we start over. It's the same. This is the previous one then, with just the 5-day margin here has been expanded to a 10-day, and the feature window then was slightly pushed forward into the future a little bit, so that we still have time to merge new things. But pretty much it makes it for the 56-day cycle, we only allow features during 21 of those days. So that's 35 days without feature merging in the cycle. So the book is of course all markdown. Here's the book, everything curl. I'll just update it and make sure that we actually have it synced here. I didn't. So here's the book, all the markdown files. There's actually quite a lot of files, 1,000 files. As you can see, that includes backup files. 336 then, better. Anyway, so I wanted to update on the releases page, project releases project. That's the release cycle image. Identify release. This is an image magic tool. I just wanted to make sure that it's the same size. So the one I just saved, before I show you what's in my download directory by name, I will just verify that it's actually called release cycle 2, I guess, because I had the old one called release cycle from before. It's curious that it is smaller. Modified. New version since new version. This is the book, and we have CIs for the book as well. So the CI jobs for the book actually verify spelling, language, words, markdown stuff. But in this case, it's nothing, right? So, well, so I'll just go ahead and push it. You know, the way you're not supposed to do it. Just bam, no CI, nothing. Just update the image, and wham. The book is done, hosted by gitbook.com, and it'll actually trigger a rebuild automatically when it discovers that I push stuff to the repository, and then it'll rebuild its contents and it'll update here. But sometimes it takes a little while until it happens. So I'll just reload a little bit, and wham, there's the new one. I think it looks fine. Whew. I think I'm ready for this with the stream for this time. I managed to do my variables. I've updated the book. I'm gonna go and read some emails, write some emails, get a coffee, yeah, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I'll be back at some later point with more curl development. I'm not sure. I don't think it'll happen this week, but I might be back again next week. I'll let you know. If you just follow me somewhere, you will probably find out when. Well, and thank you for joining and chatting and everything. It's fun to have you with me when I do this. See you later. Bye.